At some point in your life, you looked at what the generation before you had built and felt that something was missing. Maybe you could not name it. Maybe you never said it out loud, but you felt it. That feeling has a name. It is called the wealth reset. And it happens so consistently across every culture, every generation, every income level, that entire societies have given it a name. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. America has a version. Asia has a version. England has a version. Different words, same outcome. One generation builds, one generation inherits, one generation starts over. The question nobody asks is why. Not bad luck, not laziness, not coincidence. There are 5 mechanisms that make this happen. Predictable, repeatable, structural. And none of them are what you think. Understanding them does not just explain the past. It changes what you do with whatever you are building right now. Mechanism 1. Taxation at transfer. The first mechanism is the most visible and the least understood in its full scope. When wealth moves from one generation to the next, it does not move cleanly. It passes through a system, and that system is designed to take a portion of it before the next generation ever touches it. The transfer is not neutral. It is a reduction event. Estate taxes, inheritance taxes, capital gains triggered at the point of liquidation. The structure varies by country and by the size of the estate, but the principle is consistent. Wealth in motion is taxable wealth. For large estates, this is planned for, structured, minimized, expected. The wealthy build around it decades in advance. Trusts, foundations, legal architecture, specifically designed to protect the asset at the point of transfer. For everyone else, the families who built something real but never built the structure around it, the asset gets hit directly, and what remains is smaller than what was built. First mechanism, first reduction. The wealth shrinks before it even arrives, but that is only the beginning. Because the second mechanism does not arrive as a single event. It works every single day, in silence. Mechanism 2. Inflation. The second mechanism is quieter, slower, and for that reason, far more destructive over time. Inflation does not announce itself. It does not remove wealth in a single event. It works the way erosion works, not breaking things, simply making them worth less year by year until one day you realize the foundation is compromised. Cash held loses value every single year, without exception. Assets that do not outpace inflation lose real value even as their nominal number stays the same. A family leaves $500,000 behind, believing it is substantial. In 20 years, at even modest inflation, it buys significantly less than it does today. The number did not change. The world around it did. They saved. They were responsible. They left something behind. And the purchasing power of that something eroded quietly. Every year, while nobody was watching. 2 mechanisms, 2 reductions, and neither of them is the one that matters most because the third mechanism is not about money at all. Mechanism 3. The knowledge gap. Money without knowledge does not last. It is that simple. The families that maintain wealth across generations are not just transferring assets. They are transferring thinking, not advice, not information. A way of seeing the world that treats money as a tool to be deployed, not a resource to be protected. Their children grow up understanding compound interest not as a concept, but as a lived reality. They understand ownership. They understand risk. They understand that the goal is not to earn money. The goal is to build things that generate money without you. That understanding is absorbed before it is ever articulated. At the dinner table, in the decisions made around them, in what is treated as normal. The families that lose wealth transfer the asset, but not the architecture. The next generation inherits money they were never taught to think about the way the people who built it did. And money without the thinking that created it returns to zero. This is not a character failure. It is not laziness or irresponsibility. It is a knowledge gap, passed down as reliably as the assets themselves. The wealthy understand this. That is why the most important inheritance in genuinely wealthy families is not the money. It is the education that surrounds it. The conversations that happen before the child is old enough to understand what they are learning. The normalization of ownership as the default. The assumption that building something is simply what people do. That education has never been distributed equally. Not because it cannot be. Because the system had no incentive to share it. The people who already have it have no reason to give it away. And the institutions designed to educate everyone else were built to produce employees, not owners. This channel exists to close that gap, not partially, not theoretically, completely, but first, the fourth mechanism. Because even when the knowledge exists, this one can still undo everything. Mechanism 4, lifestyle inflation. The fourth mechanism is the most human of all. When wealth appears, lifestyle expands, not because of greed, not because of recklessness, because it is what human nature does in the presence of abundance. The house gets bigger, the car gets better, the standard of living expands to meet the available resource. And when it does, something specific happens to the wealth. Capital gets converted into consumption. The asset that was generating gets spent. The investment that was compounding gets liquidated. The foundation that took a generation to build gets used to furnish a life rather than fund the next layer. And when the lifestyle has expanded to consume what was built, there is nothing left to compound. The next generation inherits the lifestyle, but not the system that made it possible. They are not starting broke in the absolute sense. They are starting broke relative to where the wealth was, with a lifestyle that expects a level their own earnings cannot yet sustain. That gap is where the reset completes itself. 4 mechanisms, 4 reductions. But there is one more, and it is the one that connects all the others. Mechanism 5, the absence of structure. The 5th mechanism ties everything together. The families that lose wealth across generations almost universally share one characteristic. They built assets without building structure around those assets. No legal architecture, no holding entities, no defined succession plan, no documented framework for how the wealth should be managed or protected when the person who built it is no longer there. The wealthy do something different. They do not just build wealth. They build containers, trusts, foundations, family offices, holding companies, legal structures designed to outlast the individual, to protect the asset from the mechanisms that would otherwise dismantle it. Without those containers, the wealth sits exposed to taxation at transfer, exposed to inflation, exposed to the lifestyle decisions of heirs who were never taught to think differently, exposed to disputes, exposed to entropy. The structure is not the wealth, but without the structure, the wealth does not survive. 5 mechanisms, 5 ways the reset happens. Now here is what changes when you understand all 5. The counters and the bridge to video 4. Every mechanism you just learned has a counter. Taxation is reduced by structure built before the transfer event, not reacting to the tax bill, building around it years in advance. Inflation is outpaced by assets that compound faster than purchasing power erodes. Not saving money, deploying it into positions that grow. The knowledge gap is closed by transferring thinking alongside assets. Not just leaving money, leaving the understanding of how money works. Lifestyle inflation is controlled by the discipline to distinguish between consuming wealth and deploying it, not refusing to live well. Understanding what living well actually costs the next generation, and the absence of structure is solved by building the container before you think you need it. None of this requires extraordinary wealth. It requires understanding, and that is exactly what most people were never given. The reset is not fate. It is a predictable outcome, and once you see the pattern, you realize something else. It is not about how much you earn, it is about what survives you. Now look at every counter we just named. Structure requires leverage. Compounding assets require leverage. Ownership thinking is built on leverage. Capital deployment is an act of leverage. Building containers is leverage applied to time. Every single counter leads to the same place. The next video is about leverage, not as a finance term, not as a strategy, as the fundamental principle that separates the people who break the cycle from the ones who repeat it. We will see you there.